we're doomed as a country, but it's good to know why we're doomed as a country. For 8 minutes, we're gonna go through this video why Africa is doomed to stay poor. And I have one inkling feeling it might. This is just a feeling, but it might be because of corruption. I don't know. This is just a guess. I don't know. I might be wrong, but let's hear it out. Corruption. It's corruption. Come on. Okay.
Within the interior of East Africa resides the small but beautiful nation of Uganda.
Uganda. Uganda. Yeah. Let's
However,
go.
Uganda is and has been for a long time been a poor country.
Yes.
This has largely been attributed to major political instability since it gained its independence in 1962. Despite this, the country has been long speculated to be poised for rapid economic and development growth on account of its significant natural resource deposits, abundant fertile agricultural land, and large working age population. But like all developing nations, Uganda has been in need of significant monetary investment to aid in the
Yeah.
development of heavy industry, increase public utilities, and scale up infrastructure to meet the demands of a growing economy and population.
Until it's faced by
This is why
corruption.
Uganda laid out an aggressive 20-year-long civil aviation master plan to dramatically upgrade the country's overburdened and only international airport, Entebbe. Located 40 miles southwest of the capital, the goal of the project was to make the airport a regional hub, something particularly important for a landlocked country.
Damn,
Then,
that could have
in
made it rich.
2015, the nation started looking for potential loan suppliers in order to obtain the mountains of capital needed for such an ambitious project.
Yeah.
They found their supplier in the Chinese National Export-Import Bank of Exim. The $207 million 20-year-long contract secured the funding to begin construction. At face value, this seems like a perfectly
Bad
normal
idea.
and mutually beneficial deal, but it underpins a much larger and insidious scheme by the Chinese Communist Party to become a superpower.
Insidious? Whoa, wait, whoa, who made this video? Casual scholar. Okay, I don't wanna say any negative words about this man, but I don't know about Insidious, bro. Like America ain't better.
With
I'm just
construction
saying.
at Entebbe well underway, things were going smoothly. However, the situation soured when the Ugandan Civil Aviation Authority started to look at the fine details of the hastily agreed upon contract.
Okay, maybe
discovering some
that
13
can
separate
make it
clauses
bad.
That were
That can make
deemed
it bad.
unfriendly or toxic, including
Okay.
measures that essentially mortgaged out the airport, with all channels for mediation to be conducted through Chinese courts, and gave China the ability to approve and veto budgets. All this means is that China is in the driver's seat of the current contract and in control of any modifications to that contract in
Okay.
the future. Under pressure from China to make a deal quickly, Ugandan leaders either failed to identify these toxic clauses
Oh
or
my god,
decided to
to
take
take the risk, yeah.
Nevertheless, things started to erode in 2020 with the global economic crash, which crippled Uganda's financial situation. In a
Jeez.
desperate attempt to renegotiate the contract in early 2021, the Chinese bank rejected.
Of course they did.
By late 2021, it's been rumored that Uganda has found itself unable to make payments, which triggered a takeover of the airport by China in November.
Which is
While
what
the
they
full
wanted
situation
anyway.
and extent of the issue is currently unknown, since both nations are trying to keep things quiet. A total takeover of the airport would not, however, be a surprising thing to occur. In fact, China, over the last decade, has seized many valuable infrastructure assets
Uganda,
of
right?
developing countries on the back of its Belt and Road Initiative.
Well, someone made a TikTok. I saw this TikTok of someone saying at least they don't take it by force, unlike America and other countries and whatnot, which is one of those things where it's like, okay, you have to pick the better devil out of the whole situation. Point is, I don't think anyone has the best interest in them in anyone other than themselves. Yeah, no one can look out for you like you can look out for yourself. No one has the best. Everyone has something to benefit out of helping someone. It even works in in a big, large scale like countries.
Hailed as the
You know,
project of the century by Chinese President Xi Jinping, the project seeks to dramatically expand global infrastructure with itself as the economic center, cementing China as a global superpower. Covering 65% of the world's total population and 140 countries, China has enticed specifically developing countries with
Yeah.
massive loans for desperately needed infrastructure projects totaling $500 billion so far. To put that mind-boggling figure
Oh my
into some
God, bro.
perspective, under the Marshall Plan, the US spent $135 billion adjusted for inflation to help rebuild Western Europe after World War II, over 4 times less than the Belt and Road Initiative to date. However, a good portion of these loans to low-income countries are unlikely to be paid off, as it appears China does not assess the nation's ability to pay back the loan. When these defaults eventually occur, the recipient country is then forced to release assets to China, either the project itself like in Tibet, or some sort of other agreement that China agrees
Agreed
upon.
upon,
In
yeah.
fact, in 2019, Uganda's southern neighbor
Jeez.
Kenya almost forfeited the port of Mombasa, the largest port in Africa
What
and
happened?
by far the most important piece of economic infrastructure in the country. However,
man.
in saving the port, Kenya is now overburdened by a mountain of Chinese debt, costing the nation over 40%
You
of
shouldn't
all
have gotten
tax
in bed
revenue
with
to
them.
make payments. One such country that did end up losing its port was Sri Lanka, who now has to lease out the port to China for the next 99 years. Not only
99.
is this a major blow to Sri Lanka's economy and sovereignty, but it also has sparked fears that China might use the port as a naval base a mere 200 miles from its geopolitical rival, India. A similar situation occurred in Djibouti, giving China a forward naval base along the most important economic shipping lane in the world. Laos, who
This
has
is
let
crazy.
external debts get out of hand, will now be forced to cede a majority stake in the national power grid, effectively putting a political stranglehold on the nation. With huge fixtures of these economies being in control by the Chinese government, the developing countries become heavily influenced, if not financially subservient, to Beijing. If China owns your only major shipping port, who do you think you'll have to trade with?
The
This is
Chinese,
called debt trap diplomacy, and the motivation to utilize it ultimately stems
Bro.
from China's current economic conundrum.
Okay, I get all that. It's just, like, when literally you don't have any other out in the situation. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'm justifying these governments and countries from making deals with superpowered countries in terms of deals and who to get in bed with and everything. But I can see the dilemma is like, how do we get out of this debt crisis? How do we get out of this poor state of affairs? How do we solve our country's problems? And the fastest way I think Africa in general has grown to deal with such situations is ask for help, ask for a loan instead of us doing it ourselves. In fact, I think it was China itself that did the same thing. It didn't ask for loans. It didn't do nothing except it just, closed its own borders, closed its own business, and it served itself. Its people served themselves, their own resources. They made a bit. I don't know specifically what they did, but they supplied and demanded whatever, man. They just got out of their own debt crisis or whatever. I don't know how to put it. Okay, I'm learning. Let's continue listening.
See, China has experienced unbelievable growth and industrialization in the last 40 years.
What are the odds?
However, that growth is largely attributed to the vast availability of very cheap labor.
Okay.
As wealth and productivity have steadily increased, that labor is slowly becoming less affordable and less competitive on the global stage, and it's starting to affect China's growth. This is called the middle income trap, of which countries such as Brazil and South Africa have experienced, ultimately stagnating their economic growth. But China has seen this coming for some time, and they have aspirations to become a superpower. Their strategy, which is enabled through the Belt and Road Initiative, is to relocate wealth generation and cheap labor to low-income countries, specifically in Africa, while transferring the domestic market to more complex industrial manufacturing and services, essentially making Africa China's new China. With
Yeah.
Africa poised to undergo dramatic economic growth in the 21st century,
bruh.
akin to Asia's in the 20th, and an explosion of population to 3.8 billion by 2100, Africa will then become the world's new source for cheap labor, and China wants to be the main beneficiary of this economic growth. By utilizing debt trap diplomacy now, China can gain access and possession of critical and increasingly valuable pieces of economic infrastructure in Asia and elsewhere. But the 2020 financial crash changed everything. China
Okay,
has
what
pivoted
happened?
rather abruptly with a decreasing desire to unload massive amounts of capital abroad due to its own domestic fears of financial meltdown,
Yeah.
including the possibility of its largest property holder Evergrande defaulting. This has caused China's foreign direct investment to slow down even more than it already was. This is having a ripple effect across the world, and Africa is hit especially hard. Countries that were expecting to and relying on securing additional funding have found themselves cut off. A project to connect a super fast rail link between the port of Mombasa and Uganda has run out of money. In Kenya, the tracks end abruptly in the countryside, some 468 kilometers short of their destination. Strapped for cash, the country is resorting to refurbishing 19th century colonial British tracks that have laid covered by foliage for over half a century. Similar difficulties are being experienced in Cameroon and Nigeria as total funding for the continent has dropped from 11 billion to 3.3 billion, a drop of over 70% in just the last 3 years. As these countries find out the hard way that the free flowing capital of the last decade is not a guarantee, and that China is utilizing these projects for political and economic gain, the future of the Belt and Road Initiative is now in question. In the meantime, however, some countries like Uganda are having to pay the price.
Yep. That is yeah, that's a sad reality. Whenever I watch these videos, man, I get so sad. I'm like, oh, Africa. Oh my goodness. Like, what are we doing? Like corruption. And I read some of the comments, one of the first comments actually, spoke of specifically where I live, South Africa. The problem is corruption. This is why countries of such amazing potential, South Africa, is drifting toward being a failed state. Probably not so much drifting as going full steam ahead. Exactly. You know, damn, bro. Like, it's sad. It's just really, really sad how you know, even even as we try to get up, something like corruption comes in and stops us from growing as a country, stops us from growing as a continent, and you can sort of like you can relate whatever's happening here with corruption as well. You know, I don't know how. I'm not really a guy who watches these things, who watches the news, who knows what's happening around the world. But I'm learning today. I'm learning today. I'm very curious about it. I'm very curious about it. Just not so long ago, I was watching why Africa is still so poor, and the main reason is because of corruption. It always has been corruption. It's insane how corruption has become a disease here, and it still is a disease, an incurable disease. Because as long as you have leaders that are corrupt, you will always have a poor Africa. And you kind of wonder where we're going to end up in the future exactly. How are we going to become a state where we become something that's a country that's respected. People can have proper jobs now. And honestly speaking, that's exactly where my concerns are coming from. It's like, bro, this on a bigger scale, it's such bad news. But the reason it's so bad is because it affects even the small guy here. We're talking about the guy who literally has to work for his family. People have to provide for their families and everything. People have to do something as simply as getting a job in the 20th century, in the 21st century. You know, um, man, I don't know. It's crazy. Right now, I am one of the lucky ones. I work for. I'm not going to name the company and whatnot, but I work for a company that's relatively, from a different country, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm one of the lucky ones. But how many people need jobs like mine? How many people need as much money as I have? How many people need just a little bit of a startup? And how never mind even employment, but how do we get to the point where we can become our own entrepreneurs and build our own businesses around our own neighborhoods and be allowed to own everything? Because to some degree, I feel like part of the reason why we are in such a bad state as Africa is because we're not allowed to some degree to flourish in our own entrepreneurial endeavors. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not gonna blame people for not buying whatever you're selling and whatnot, but to somewhere along the lines, even the best minded entrepreneurs, there's somewhere where they get stuck at, and they just can't get over some hump, some wall somewhere. You know, it kind of makes me wonder, why is Africa failing? Like at the smallest level, why can't an entrepreneur, or why can't we birth entrepreneurs? Why can't we birth business minded people, people who serve needs that are, that are investigated within the community? Why can't, I don't know, because we have somehow these issues, they have to link to the one guy, that can change everything. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, I'm still learning all this stuff. It was just why I researched why Africa is poor, and I stumbled on this other video. I already watched why Africa is poor. I still want to watch it again and react to it, but yeah, I wanted to watch this one. Why Africa is doomed to stay poor. And it didn't even cover Africa. It covered just one of the countries, which is Uganda. And like I said, one of the videos I watched before ending this video, damn, like, this video is going on too long, but before ending this video, I watched the video, a TikTok of this guy, because right now it's 2023, and BRICS is sort of like trying to make its own new currency that's going to challenge the dollar somehow, or replace the dollar, because everything we're trading is with the dollar and not really value for value. We're not trading anything of value, or nothing of value is being given back to us, just literally the dollar. And it's not just South Africa, it's not just Africa, it's, even Russia itself, even China itself, they have to trade for money in the dollar, and they're tired of it, and that's why BRICS is aiming to make its own, new currency and everything. And there was this video I was watching where, you know, the guy that this woman asked this guy, is like, why, shouldn't Africa be concerned, or she's concerned about why China is working alongside Africa and whatnot. They essentially, she was saying this, whatever's happening is like, they're making African nations, these developing nations, subservient to them through debt and everything. And it's a very concerning thing. And the guy said, well, at least they're not doing it like America would, or the British would, which is literally try to take over their military style, you know. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was one of those people. I was like, okay, yeah, 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 of course, yeah. But it's like, bro, like it doesn't. Why does it need to happen? Why do we need to get into these crazy deals in the first place? Why? Why? Why is it that if we're not facing a gun, we're facing the tax collector, from China? Why? Why? Like, why? Why do I have to owe somebody something? Why do I have to give somebody something? It's because people want to steal from me. That's why. People want to steal from me. People want to take over from me. That's why. And if I don't allow them to, they're gonna nuke me. They're gonna nuke me. China, I don't know if they have nukes, but you know, they have they have some other type of nukes, which is money and all that kind of stuff. They're just getting into business deal. They're actually doing business. And if one country is not doing business, the other one is just doing tyrannical moves. And if we don't are not subservient somehow, and right now it's actually happening. I've been hearing America literally is saying, so they're saying South Africa is giving weapons to Russia. They're already starting. The propaganda is starting. Already, the propaganda is starting. Damn. It won't be long until we look like Iraq. It won't be long until we look like Afghanistan. I pray to God that doesn't happen. Of course, I live in this country. I live in this flipping country, man. I live here. I have aspirations. I want this country to flourish. I don't know how this country is gonna get out of this, honestly, but we are a biatch to we're acting as one. Anyway, sorry for making the video long. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye boy.